Don't you dare lay a finger on her, you psychotic bitch! Get away from my daughter! Dominic's roar ripped through the dining room of the Silver Lining estate. I didn't flinch. I slowly straightened my back, gripping the comb like a dagger. I turned to face him, my eyes burning with a cold, incandescent rage. Sophie, only 3, let out a terrified wail and scrambled behind his legs. Psychotic? I spat the word at him like a curse. You've got a hell of a lot of nerve, Dominic. I was fixing her hair because you're too busy staring at your $12 million portfolio to notice your daughter looks like she's been living in a dumpster. She's screaming because she's terrified of you, Catherine. Dominic snarled, his face flushing an ugly red. Martha, take Sophie to the nursery, now before this woman does more damage. Martha scurried in, head down. I blocked her path with a single, sharp look. Don't move, Martha. I'm the mistress of this house, not a leper. And you, Dominic, you're playing a very dangerous game. It's not a game. Dominic stepped into my space, his breath smelling of expensive mint and lies. I saw the bruises on her arm. Don't lie to me. Liar! I hissed, my voice trembling with suppressed fury. I have never laid a violent hand on her. If there are bruises, you put them there. You've been whispering poison in her ear for months. Don't trust Kat. Kat is sick. I've heard you. The staff sees it. The neighbors see it, he whispered, his voice dropping into a deadly calm tone. You're unraveling. Maybe it's time for a long stay at a psychiatric ward. I slapped him. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Dominic's head snapped to the side. He slowly turned back, a terrifying smile stretching across his lips. Hit me again, he urged. Make it easier for the judge. You want a villain, Dominic? Fine. I leaned in, my voice like a serrated blade. But remember, I built an empire while you were wasting your father's trust fund. I don't break. I burn. And if you try to frame me, I will turn this mansion into your funeral pyre. Go to your room. He dismissed me coldly. The doctors will be here shortly. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound, and stormed toward the kitchen. My blood was boiling. My eyes fell on Sophie's half-finished milk. A slight, oily film sat on the surface. My phone buzzed. Unknown. He's drugging her milk to make her hallucinate, Kat. Look at the smoke detector in the pantry. He's filming your episodes. I looked up. A tiny red light blinked from the ceiling. A trap. Did you find what you were looking for, darling? Dominic was at the door, blocking the exit. I grabbed the glass of milk and walked straight at him. I was just wondering, Dominic, since you're so worried about health lately, why don't you drink this? It's Sophie's favorite. His eyes flickered with a split second of pure fear. Drink it, I commanded, stepping into his space. Prove to me I'm the crazy one. Drink the damn milk, Dominic. Get out of my way, he growled, reaching for my arm. I pulled back, my face a mask of vengeful fury. Don't touch me. You think you can steal Sarah's legacy and blame me for the wreckage? I'm going to tear your life apart, brick by brick. By the time I'm done, you'll be begging for a padded cell. I dashed the milk against his silk shirt. There. Now you look exactly like the mess you've made of this family. I shoved past him and bolted for the stairs. The war had officially begun. The heavy oak door of the guest suite clicked shut, and I heard the unmistakable metallic turn of a key from the outside. Dominic had actually done it. He had locked me in. I didn't scream. I didn't bang on the door like a frantic victim. That's what he wanted. More footage for his hysteria reel. Instead, I paced the room, my heels clicking sharply on the polished floorboards, my mind spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. You arrogant bastard! I whispered to the empty room, my chest heaving with a mixture of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated loathing. You think a lock can hold me? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I turned my attention to the room. If Dominic was filming the pantry, he was filming this room too. I scanned the crown molding, the vents, the smoke detectors. My eyes caught a glint. A tiny glass lens hidden inside a decorative gold clock on the mantel. I walked right up to it, leaning in until my face filled the frame. I didn't look crazy. I looked like a hunter. I hope you're enjoying the show, Dominic, I said, my voice low and lethal. Because the final act is going to be a bloodbath. I turned away and headed for the ensuite bathroom. I needed to think, and I needed to move. While checking the vanity, I noticed a small, recessed panel behind the towel rack. This was an old estate. The silver lining had secrets built into its bones. I pried the panel open with a nail file. Inside wasn't a hidden safe, but something far more valuable. A dusty, leather-bound journal. I sat on the edge of the tub and flipped it open. The handwriting was elegant but frantic. It belonged to Sarah, Dominic's first wife, the woman who allegedly fell to her death. May 14th, the entry began. He's mixing the haloperidol into my tea again. My head feels like it's filled with cotton. He told the nanny I tried to jump from the balcony. He's building a case, piece by piece. If I don't make it, look behind the painting in his study. The real Will is there. He's not the owner. Sophie is. My blood turned to ice. It was the same script, the same drugs, the same gaslighting, the same slow-motion murder. Dominic wasn't a mourning widower. He was a serial predator who hunted wives for their trust funds. Suddenly, the vents hummed. A voice drifted through the ductwork, muffled but clear enough. Is she out yet? It was Amber, the nurse Dominic had hired. She's sedated, Dominic's voice replied, sounding chillingly bored. I'll give her another dose in an hour. By tomorrow, she won't even remember her own name, let alone where she hid that vial of milk. And the kid? Amber asked. She's still crying about the mask man. She'll learn to stay quiet, Dominic growled, or she'll join her mother. I gripped the journal so hard the leather groaned. A mask man? He was terrorizing his own 3-year-old daughter to make her fear the woman who was trying to save her. The depravity of it made me want to vomit, but the anger kept me upright. I looked at the window. It was a 20-foot drop to the rose garden. To a normal woman, it was a death trap. To me, it was the only way to the study. I grabbed a silk bedsheet, my movements precise and cold. I wasn't Catherine Sullivan, the hysterical wife anymore. I was the storm that was about to break over Dominic Vance's head. Wait for me, Dominic, I hissed as I tied the sheet to the heavy bedpost. I'm coming for everything you own. The winter air hit me like a physical blow as I slid down the makeshift rope of silk sheets. My feet landed silently on the frozen mulch of the rose garden. I didn't stop to catch my breath. Adrenaline was my fuel, and fury was my compass. I crept along the shadows of the mansion's stone exterior until I reached the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dominic's private study. The lights were dim, but I could see him. He was pouring a drink, looking smug, staring at a laptop screen, likely watching the empty bed in the room I had just escaped. Enjoy the empty frame, you son of a bitch, I hissed. I knew the secondary entrance through the library was usually left unlocked for the cleaning crew. I slipped inside, my movements fluid and lethal. The smell of expensive leather and old money hit me. But all I felt was disgust. This room was the heart of his lies. I moved toward the oversized oil painting of the Hudson Valley that hung behind his mahogany desk. "Look behind the painting," Sarah's journal had said. I gripped the gilded frame and pulled. It was heavy, but I didn't care. I felt like I could lift the entire house if it meant crushing him. Behind the canvas, a small wall safe was embedded in the brick. "Digital," I whispered, staring at the keypad. I thought back to our wedding day. No, he was too narcissistic for that. I tried Sophie's birthday. Incorrect. I tried the date Sarah died. Beep. The light turned green. My stomach churned. The man used his first wife's death date as a password. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a ghoul. I swung the safe door open. Inside was a thick blue folder. I flipped through the pages. The last will and testament of Sarah O'Shea Vance. My eyes scanned the legal jargon. Sarah's father had left the entire $12 million estate to Sophie, with Sarah as the sole trustee. If Sarah died, the trust was to be managed by her brother, Liam O'Shea. Dominic's name appeared nowhere except in a clause that stripped him of everything if he was found guilty of any misconduct. "So that's why you framed Liam for embezzlement," I muttered, my heart hammering. "You didn't just kill her. You erased her entire family." "It's a beautiful document, isn't it?" I spun around. Dominic was leaning against the library doorframe, a wicked, triumphant glint in his eyes. He wasn't surprised. He was holding a remote control, and as he pressed a button, the heavy iron shutters of the library slammed shut, sealing us in. "I knew you were too smart to stay in that room, Kat," he purred, walking toward me. "That's what I liked about you. You have spirit. It's going to be so much more satisfying to watch it break." "You killed her," I said, holding the folder up like a weapon. "You drugged her, you drove her into the ground, and then you pushed her. And now you're doing it to Sophie." "Sophie is a means to an end," he dismissed with a wave of his hand. "And you? You're just a tragic second act. A grieving husband loses his first wife to an accident and his second to insanity. The world will weep for me, Catherine, and I will have every cent of that $12 million. "You won't have a dime," I snarled, stepping around the desk, my hand closing over a heavy brass letter opener. "I've already sent a sample of the milk to a contact, and I have Sarah's diary." Dominic laughed, a cold, echoing sound. "You mean the diary I planted for you to find? The milk you think you saved? Martha already swapped the vials in your bag while you were climbing out the window." He lunged for me, his face contorted into a mask of predatory hunger. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I swung the brass opener with everything I had, catching him across the cheek. "You're going to have to do better than that, darling," he growled, wiping blood from his face. "Oh, I plan to!" I barked, my voice dripping with incandescent hatred. "I'm not Sarah, Dominic. I'm the woman who's going to burn your kingdom to the ground." The library felt like a cage, the air thick with the smell of old paper and the metallic tang of Dominic's blood. He touched the gash on his cheek, staring at the red on his fingertips with a look of pure, murderous disbelief. "You actually struck me," he whispered, his voice trembling with a terrifying quietness. "I'm just getting started," I snapped, my knuckles white as I gripped the brass letter opener. "That was for the milk. The next one is for Sarah." Dominic lunged again, but this time he wasn't playing. He tackled me into the mahogany desk, sending gold-leafed pens and crystal paperweights flying. His fingers locked around my throat, his strength fueled by a lifetime of arrogance. "You think you're so special, Catherine," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "You're just another body in a pretty dress. I own this house. I own the police. I own your reputation." "Who do you think the world will believe? A billionaire philanthropist or a woman with a history of outbursts?" I couldn't breathe, but I could still fight. I slammed my knee into his midsection, and as he gasped, I raked my nails across his eyes. He howled, releasing his grip, and I scrambled back, gasping for air that tasted like victory. "The world won't believe a corpse, Dominic," I panted, my voice raspy but steady. I dived for his laptop on the desk. If he was filming me, he was recording this. I needed to find the server link. My fingers flew across the keys, my pulse thundering. "Stop!" he screamed, stumbling toward me, half blinded by the blood and tears in his eyes. "Too late!" I barked. I found the directory. security_feeds_live. I didn't just find the footage. I found the cloud upload. I hit a sequence of keys I'd memorized from my own firm's security protocols. Broadcast to external mirror. "What are you doing?" he demanded, lunging for the power cord. I stood my ground, shielding the computer with my body. "I just sent the last 5 minutes of you admitting to Sarah's murder and threatening mine to Liam O'Shea's private server. It's out of the house, Dominic. It's in the hands of the one man who hates you more than I do." Dominic froze. The smug mask he'd worn for years finally shattered, revealing the hollow, pathetic worm underneath. "You're bluffing. Liam is in prison." "He was paroled 3 days ago." I lied with a vicious smirk. I didn't actually know if Liam was out, but the look of pure terror on Dominic's face was worth every lie I'd ever told. "And he's been waiting for a reason to come home." Just then, a heavy thud echoed through the iron shutters. Then another. The sound of metal groaning under pressure. "Dominic! Open this door!" It was Martha's voice, but it wasn't her usual timid whisper. It was a scream of pure panic. "The police are at the gate! They saw the broadcast!" I laughed, a jagged, triumphant sound that echoed through the library. "It turns out, Dominic, that your high-tech security system works a little too well when the owner is a psychopath." "I'll kill you before they get inside," he growled, reaching for a heavy glass decanter to bash my skull in. "Try it," I challenged, stepping away from the desk and squaring my shoulders. My fear had completely burned away, leaving only a cold, hard diamond of hatred. "Let's give them a grand finale for the cameras." He raised the glass, his face contorted in a mask of primal rage, but before he could swing, the library's iron shutter shrieked. The emergency release had been triggered from the outside. The war wasn't over, but the walls were finally coming down. The library shutters shrieked as they were forced upward, letting in a flood of cold moonlight and the blinding blue and red strobes of police cruisers. Dominic froze, the heavy crystal decanter still raised above his head. He looked pathetic, a hollowed-out king losing his throne in real time. "Drop it, Dominic!" I yelled, my voice commanding and sharp enough to cut bone. "It's over. The whole world just watched you try to finish what you started with Sarah." He didn't drop it. Instead, his eyes darted toward the side exit leading to the nursery wing. "You think you've won?" he hissed, his voice cracking. "If I'm going down, I'm taking the only thing Sarah left behind." "Don't you dare!" I lunged, but he was faster, driven by a desperate, cowardly adrenaline. He slammed the library door behind him, and I heard the heavy electronic bolt slide into place. He was heading for Sophie. "Martha, open the door!" I screamed, pounding on the oak panels. I can't, ma'am. He's overridden the system from his phone! Martha's voice came from the hallway, sobbing and frantic. I didn't waste another second. I didn't wait for the police to breach the shutters. I grabbed the heavy brass floor lamp and swung it with a guttural scream of pure, protective rage at the library's interior glass partition. The tempered glass exploded into a million shimmering diamonds. I jumped through the jagged frame, ignoring the slices of pain as the shards tore at my palms. I sprinted toward the nursery, my heart a rhythmic hammer of not her, not her, not her. I reached the nursery door just as Dominic was dragging a terrified, screaming Sophie out of her bed. He had a kitchen knife in his hand, the same one I'd seen him use to threaten her teddy bear on the hidden recordings. Let her go, Dominic! I roared, standing in the doorway like a vengeful goddess. You touch one hair on her head and I will end you myself. Stay back, Catherine, he shrieked, holding the knife near Sophie's tiny throat. I'll do it. I'll give the police a real tragedy to write about. Look at yourself, I said, forcing my voice to drop into a low, lethal calm. I took a step forward, my eyes locked on his with a predatory intensity that made his hand tremble. You're not a billionaire. You're not a genius. You're just a weak, sniveling little man who's afraid of a 3-year-old girl. And the truth. I'm the one in control, he yelled, but the knife was shaking violently now. No, I countered, stepping closer, ignoring the blade. I'm the one who outplayed you. I'm the one who found Sarah's voice, and I'm the one who's going to make sure Sophie never remembers your name. From the hallway, the sound of boots thundered. Police! Drop the weapon! Dominic's eyes widened. For a split second, he looked at Sophie, then at the open balcony door behind him. He realized the game was truly up. In his final act of cowardice, he shoved Sophie toward me and bolted for the balcony. I caught her, pulling her small, shaking body against my chest, shielding her eyes. I've got you, baby. I've got you. Dominic didn't jump. He was tackled by 3 officers before he could even reach the railing. As they slammed him onto the cold stone, his screams of, "Do you know who I am?" echoed through the Hamptons night, sounding more like a whimper than a threat. I looked down at Sophie. She wasn't screaming anymore. She was looking up at me, her tiny hands clutching my torn shirt. Cat, she whispered, her voice tiny and broken. I'm here, Sophie, I said, my voice thick with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. And I'm never, ever letting go. The mansion was silent now, the golden cage finally broken. But as I watched them drag Dominic away in handcuffs, I knew the real work, the healing, was only just beginning. The flashing lights of the ambulances illuminated the Silver Lining estate, turning the snow-covered lawn into a chaotic mosaic of blue and red. I sat on the back of an emergency vehicle, a heavy shock blanket draped over my shoulders. My hands were bandaged where the glass had sliced them, but I didn't feel the sting. I only felt the weight of Sophie, who had finally fallen into a fitful sleep in my arms. Mrs. Sullivan, or should I say Miss Sullivan? I looked up. A tall man in a charcoal suit stood before me. He had a jagged scar running along his jawline and eyes that looked like they had seen too much of the world's rot. I'm Liam O'Shea, he said, his voice a low rumble. Sarah's brother. I tightened my grip on Sophie. You're not in prison. Dominic's proof of my embezzlement didn't hold up once an independent auditor actually looked at the books, Liam said, his face darkening. I've been out for 48 hours, trying to get a court order to see my niece. Then I saw your broadcast. You're a hell of a fighter, Kat. I'm a woman who doesn't like being played for a fool, I snapped, my voice still sharp with the remnants of my rage. He killed her, Liam. He killed Sarah. I found her journal. Liam sank onto the bumper beside me, his head in his hands. I knew it. I knew she didn't just fall. But Dominic had the coroner in his pocket and a dozen witnesses saying she was unstable. Just like he was doing to you. He was mixing haloperidol into the child's milk, I said, the fury rising again. He wanted Maya, Sophie, to be declared mentally incompetent so he could control the $12 million trust forever. He was going to erase us both. Liam looked at Sophie, his eyes softening for a fleeting second before turning back to Steele. The police found his trophy room in the basement. He had a hidden server with years of recordings. He didn't just film you, Kat. He filmed Sarah. He filmed every moment of her decline, like it was some kind of twisted, sick art project. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. Is it enough to keep him away forever? It's enough to bury him, Liam promised. But there's a problem. Dominic's mother, Beatrice, just landed at the private airfield. She's already called her lawyers. She's going to claim that since you're mentally unstable, based on the medical records Dominic spent months faking, you're an unfit guardian. She wants custody of Sophie and control of the estate. I let out a harsh, jagged laugh. She wants the money. That vulture never even looked at Sophie during our wedding. She's powerful, Kat, Liam warned. And technically, you're the stepmother with no blood relation. On paper, you're the woman the police just found covered in blood and glass, yelling at a billionaire. I stood up, handing the sleeping child to Liam. My blanket slid to the ground, revealing my torn, blood-stained dress. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a soldier. Let her come, I said, my voice echoing with a lethal, incandescent calm. Dominic thought he could break me with drugs and cameras. Beatrice thinks she can break me with lawyers and social standing. They're both wrong. I looked toward the long driveway where a black limousine was pulling up. I built a business empire from a garage in Queens, Liam, I sneered, wiping a smudge of Dominic's blood from my cheek. If Beatrice wants a war for this child, I'll give her one she won't survive. Tell the police I'm ready for my statement. I have a few more secrets to share. The heavy scent of Chanel No. 5 hit the precinct hallway before Beatrice Vance did. She swept in like a queen, entering a conquered territory, flanked by 3 lawyers in $1,000 suits. Her face was a masterpiece of Botox and cold indifference, showing not a hint of distress that her son had just been hauled away in zip ties. I was sitting in a small plastic chair, my bandaged hands resting on my knees, when she stopped in front of me. She didn't look at my wounds. She looked at me like I was a stain on her expensive rug. "Catherine," she said, her voice like ice water. "You've made quite a mess of my son's reputation tonight. I hope you enjoyed your little performance for the cameras." I stood up slowly, every muscle in my body aching, but my eyes remained fixed on hers, burning with an intense, unyielding light. "Your son isn't a victim, Beatrice. He's a murderer and a child abuser. If I were you, I'd be more worried about the accessory charges coming your way." Beatrice let out a dry, rattling laugh. "Accessory? Don't be tedious. I'm here for my granddaughter. Liam O'Shea is a common criminal, and you, well, the medical records speak for themselves. You're a disturbed woman with a history of violent outbursts. Sophie belongs with her family." "Family?" I stepped into her space, ignoring the lawyers who bristled at my movement. You haven't seen that child in 6 months. You didn't even know her middle name at the wedding. You don't want a granddaughter. You want the $12 million trust that your bankrupt investment firm so desperately needs. The mask slipped for a fraction of a second. Her eyes widened, the pupils shrinking into pinpricks of pure greed. You know nothing about my business. I know everything, I countered, my voice a lethal whisper. Dominic isn't the only one who likes to hack into things. I spent the last 3 hours while Sophie slept going through the offshore accounts Dominic used to funnel Sarah's money. Guess whose name is on the receiving end of those transfers? Beatrice Vance. The head lawyer stepped forward. Ms. Sullivan, these are baseless accusations. Shut up, I snapped, not even glancing at him. I have the digital receipts. Dominic wasn't just killing Sarah for himself. He was doing it to keep your family's crumbling empire afloat. You didn't just ignore his crimes. Bitch, you subsidized them. Beatrice's face turned a sickly shade of gray beneath her heavy foundation. You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk Sophie's inheritance by involving the feds. Try me, I dared her, my face inches from hers. I don't care about the money. I care about the girl. If you don't sign the guardianship papers over to Liam and me within the next hour, I'm handing these files to the IRS and the FBI. You won't just lose the trust, Beatrice. You'll lose your penthouses, your jewelry, and your freedom. You would ruin yourself to destroy us? She hissed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hatred. I'm already ruined in your world, Beatrice, I said, a jagged, triumphant smile touching my lips. And I've never felt better. Now, tell your lapdogs to start drafting. You have 59 minutes left. I turned my back on her, walking toward the room where Sophie was waiting. I could feel her eyes burning into my spine, but I didn't care. The vultures were circling, but I was the one with the gun. The ink on Beatrice's guardianship waiver was barely dry when the world turned red. A shrill, mechanical shriek ripped through the precinct hallway. The fire alarm. Within seconds, a thick, acrid wall of black smoke began pouring from the ventilation shafts near the holding cells. It smelled of sulfur and burning plastic, a chemical cocktail meant to choke and disorient. What the hell is this? Liam shouted, instinctively pulling Sophie into his chest to shield her face. The whole block is going up. Dominic, I hissed, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. He's not just escaping, he's burning the evidence. Panic erupted. Officers scrambled for extinguishers, and the lobby became a chaotic sea of shouting voices and blinding strobe lights. In the middle of the frenzy, I caught a glimpse of Beatrice's lead lawyer. He wasn't running for the exit. He was slipping a sleek silver keycard to a man in a janitor's uniform near the restricted evidence wing. My instincts screamed. I didn't head for the fresh air. I bolted in the opposite direction, toward the heart of the smoke. Cat! Get back here! Liam's voice echoed behind me, but I didn't stop. I slammed through the swinging double doors of the evidence processing room. The janitor was already there, dousing a stack of crates with a clear liquid that shimmered under the flickering fluorescent lights. He had a lighter in his hand, the small flame reflecting in his cold, hollow eyes. Hey, put it down! I roared, grabbing a heavy CO2 extinguisher from the wall. The man didn't hesitate. He flicked the lighter onto the soaked crates. Whoosh! A pillar of fire roared to life, the heat so intense it felt like it was peeling the skin off my face. The man dived through a side window, shattering the glass and disappearing into the night. I didn't chase him. I couldn't. My eyes were locked on the melting plastic case in the center of the flames, the one holding Sarah's journal and the digital drive containing Dominic's private server. You're not taking this from her! I screamed at the fire. The room was becoming an oven. The oxygen was thinning, replaced by a searing heat that made my hair singe and my clothes tighten against my skin. I didn't think about the risk. I didn't think about the $12 million or the danger. I only thought about Sophie and the mother she had lost. I swung the heavy fire extinguisher like a battering ram. Crack! The reinforced plastic case shattered. I lunged into the heart of the heat, my hands screaming in protest as I grabbed the scorched leather journal and the ruggedized hard drive. The ceiling above me groaned. A section of the acoustic tiles collapsed in a rain of sparks and burning debris. I tucked the evidence against my chest, shielding it with my body, and turned to run. My vision was swimming in shades of orange and gray. My lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. I stumbled toward the exit, my knees buckling. Just as the darkness began to close in at the edges of my sight, a pair of strong arms grabbed my collar and hauled me backward. "I've got you! Move, Cat! Move!" Liam dragged me through the doors just as a backdraft blew the windows of the room outward in a deafening explosion of glass and flame. We tumbled onto the wet asphalt of the parking lot, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. I rolled onto my side, coughing violently, spitting out thick black soot. My arms were red and blistered, the fabric of my dress fused to my skin in places. But I didn't let go. I looked down at the charred folder in my arms. The edges were black, but the heart of Sarah's truth was still there. "Is Sophie safe?" I gasped, my voice a ragged whisper. "She's in the ambulance with the paramedics. She's fine, Kat." "My God, look at you," Liam said, his voice trembling as he looked at my injuries. "I'm fine," I snarled, forcing myself to stand, though my head spun. I looked toward the back of the precinct. A black SUV was tearing out of the rear alley, its headlights off, disappearing into the shadows. "He's not in the cell, is he?" "The guard was bribed," Liam confirmed, his jaw tight. "He's gone." "He's going to the estate," I realized. My eyes turned to cold, hard diamonds. "He has a secondary safe in the nursery. He thinks if he can destroy the backup files there and grab the offshore codes, he can still win." I reached out my hand, my bandaged fingers trembling but firm. "Give me your keys, Liam." "Kat, you're in shock. You're burned. Let the police—" "The police are busy putting out a fire he started," I yelled, the adrenaline overriding the pain. "I am the only one who knows how he thinks. I am the only one who can stop him before he disappears forever. Give me the keys." Liam looked at me, truly looked at me, and saw that there was no stopping the storm I had become. He dropped the keys into my palm. I dived into his truck, the engine roaring to life like a caged beast. Dominic Vance wanted to burn the world down to hide his sins? Fine. I would meet him in the ashes. The tires of the heavy-duty truck screamed as I tore out of the precinct parking lot, fishtailing onto the icy highway. My lungs felt like they had been scrubbed with sandpaper from the smoke, and the burns on my arms throbbed with every jar of the steering wheel. But I didn't slow down. I pushed the pedal to the floor, the speedometer climbing past 90. Dominic wasn't heading for the airport. He was heading back to the Silver Lining estate. He had a private helipad there, and more importantly, a secondary safe hidden in the nursery floor. He wasn't just running. He was coming back for the last of the blood money. I beat him there by seconds. I saw his black SUV swerving through the gates, crashing through the ornamental hedges, rather than waiting for the iron bars to swing open. I slammed my truck into the side of his vehicle just as he reached the front circle, the impact jarring my teeth and sending a spray of shattered glass across the snow. It ends here, Dominic! I roared, kicking my door open before the vehicles had even stopped shaking. Dominic scrambled out of the wreckage, looking like a cornered rat. His expensive suit was torn, his face smeared with soot and blood, and his eyes wide with a manic, flickering desperation. He held a small, heavy briefcase, the offshore codes. "You're a ghost, Catherine," he shrieked, backing toward the grand entrance of the house. "You're dead! I killed you in that fire! Why won't you just stay down?" "Because I have a message for you from Sarah!" I yelled, stepping into the blinding light of the mansion's floodlights. I looked like a demon rising from the ashes, hair matted with soot, clothes charred, eyes glowing with a terrifying holy fire. "She told me to tell you that the $12 million wasn't for you. It was the price of your soul." I lunged at him. He swung the briefcase, hitting me squarely in the shoulder, but I didn't falter. I tackled him onto the marble steps, my fingers digging into his throat. We rolled across the cold stone, a blur of limbs and animalistic snarls. He was stronger, but I was fueled by the collective rage of 2 wives and a terrified child. "I'll kill you!" he gasped, reaching for a jagged piece of stone that had broken off a decorative urn. "I'll bury you next to her!" "You'll try?" I hissed, grabbing his wrist and slamming it against the edge of the step until the stone clattered away. I pinned him down, my knee buried in his chest, my face inches from his. "But look up, Dominic. Look at the house you thought you owned." The front doors swung open. Martha stood there, but she wasn't alone. Behind her were 6 staff members, gardeners, maids, security guards, men and women who had watched him abuse his power for years. They weren't moving to help him. They were standing there as witnesses. "They're all watching," I whispered, my voice dripping with venomous triumph. "Every camera you installed, every person you stepped on, they're all recording this. You're nothing but a pathetic, aging child beater." Dominic let out a primal scream of frustration and tried to throw me off, but the sound of sirens was already filling the air again. This time, they weren't just the local police. These were the heavy black Suburbans of the federal authorities. I stood up, stepping off his chest as if he were a piece of trash. I wiped the blood from my mouth and adjusted my torn collar. "You're going to a place where money can't buy you air, Dominic," I said, my voice cold and final. "And while you're rotting there, I'm going to spend every cent of that $12 million making sure Sophie forgets you ever existed." As the feds swarmed him, pinning him into the frozen dirt, I turned my back on him. I didn't need to watch the end. I had already won. I walked past the staff, through the doors of the house that was no longer a prison, and headed toward the one thing that mattered: the future. The dust had finally settled over the Hamptons, but the air at the Silver Lining estate no longer tasted of salt and deception. 3 months had passed since the night the sky turned red with sirens and shame. Today, the Atlantic breeze was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh jasmine I had planted to replace Dominic's suffocating thorny roses. The mansion, once a gilded cage designed to break the spirits of women, was finally breathing again. I stood on the grand balcony, the very spot where Sarah had allegedly lost her footing. I didn't feel the phantom chill of her presence anymore. Instead, I felt a quiet, simmering sense of justice. Dominic was currently rotting in a federal holding cell, awaiting a trial that would likely consume the rest of his life. Between the recordings I had mirrored to Liam's server and the physical evidence I had pulled from the fire, there was no lawyer expensive enough to save him. Beatrice had fled to a non-extradition country, abandoning her jewelry, her penthouses, and her dignity, realizing her investment in her son had finally hit rock bottom. "Kat, look! I drew a son for you!" I turned, the hardness in my eyes melting instantly. Sophie was sitting on a plush rug in the sun-drenched nursery, her tiny hands covered in yellow crayon. The shadows that had once haunted her 3-year-old face had vanished. She didn't scream in her sleep anymore. She didn't flinch when someone entered the room. Most importantly, she had started calling me Mom. "It's the brightest sun in all of New York, Sophie," I said, kneeling beside her and kissing her forehead. A shadow fell across the doorway. Liam O'Shea stood there, looking 10 years younger than the day he walked out of the precinct. He wasn't carrying a briefcase filled with offshore codes this time. He held a thick stack of legal documents tied with a simple ribbon. "It's done, Kat," Liam said, his voice thick with a relief that had been years in the making. "The court has finalized everything. The trust is fully restored, and the $12 million is under Sophie's name. You and I are her legal co-guardians. Dominic Vance has been legally stripped of every right, every cent, and every shred of his name." I stood up, my bandaged hands, now healed into thin, silvery scars, resting on my hips. "And the estate?" "We just got the zoning approval." Liam smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "The Silver Lining won't be a private residence anymore. We're turning it into a sanctuary for women and children who have been victims of the same psychological accidents Dominic perfected. It's going to be the Sarah O'Shea Foundation." I walked to the mantel where Sarah's scorched journal now sat inside a glass display case. It was no longer a secret to be hidden. It was a testament. "He thought he could break us, Liam. He thought because we were just wives or just family, we were pawns to be moved across his board. He forgot that a pawn is the only piece that can become a queen if it reaches the end of the line." "You didn't just reach the end of the line, Kat," Liam said, leaning against the doorframe. "You burnt the board and built a new world from the ashes. I don't think any of us realized just how dangerous you were until you were protecting someone else." "I wasn't dangerous," I corrected him, looking back at Sophie, who was now busy drawing a garden around her son. "I was just a woman who had finally had enough. Dominic wanted a tragedy. He got one. It just wasn't mine." I walked back out onto the balcony, looking at the ocean. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating my next move or watching for hidden cameras. I wasn't building a marketing empire or fighting for my sanity. I was just Catherine Sullivan, a mother, a survivor, and a victor. The $12 million was a fortune, yes, but the real inheritance was the look in Sophie's eyes as she ran toward me, her arms outstretched. "Kat, can we go to the beach now? You promised." I laughed, a sound that felt foreign but beautiful in this house. I scooped her up, feeling her small, solid weight against my chest. She was Sarah's legacy, but she was my daughter now. "Yes, baby, we can go wherever we want. The gates are open." I took one last look at the mansion, at the silver lining of light hitting the waves. The storm was over. The game was finished. And as I walked down the marble steps that had once been my battlefield, I knew that for the first time, I wasn't running away from anything. I was walking toward the light. Don't let anyone gaslight you or treat you like a victim. When life gets unfair, trust your gut and fight back. You're the boss of your own story. Stay sharp and stand your ground. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, hit like, drop a comment, and follow for more stories. See you in the next one.